Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Caring Counts live episode. Happy Wednesday to everyone. We are super excited to be going live once again. Our goal with these is to connect people in memory care because we believe the more connections you have, the more support you have. As always, Caring Counts is brought to you by Applewood Our House. Today, we have Jamie Sarche and Dale Carter is rejoining us. Welcome back, Dale. Jamie, thanks for being here. We're super excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be with you both today.
Good. Well, we're happy you're here too. Will you, let's jump right in. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Absolutely. So I am the director of pre-planning at Feldman Mortuary, which has been serving the community for almost 90 years. I've done that for 11 years. So what I do is help people to put their own funeral plans in place long before they're needed, hopefully decades before they are needed, to give the gift of a bereavement plan, a path for their loved ones to walk on when they really need it most.
Well said. I love the language that you use, giving the gift and things like that. I can't wait to dig in more to that. Dale, will you also tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I really consider myself an educator for family caregivers. And as you know, I facilitate the Family Care Cafe, a support group. My husband was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia in 2014, and he spent his last 18 months at Applewood Our House. I was so fortunate to meet Jamie. The first week I moved us here to Denver, I heard her speak. And when I walked away from that presentation, I'm like, this is who I want to help us plan Bill's end of life. And so thank you, Jamie. You'll always be in my heart.
I didn't remember that timing. I didn't realize you were new to town.
I didn't even know where the Arvada Center was. I was stressed to the max trying to get to that presentation.
Oh, wow. Well, that just feels like it was so meant to be.
Absolutely. And today we are talking about pre-planning and planning for end of life because that's something we all go through. And so really today we want to hear from our audience too. If you have any questions about end of life planning or anything to that effect, please post them in the comments. We'll post them up. We'll take questions. We're super excited to kind of start this conversation. And maybe excited is the wrong word. I always get a little nervous around talking about end of life, and I think that's kind of a normal feeling, but I'm ready to take a step into it. And so with that being said, Jamie, why is it important? Why should we be talking about it?
Well, first of all, I want to normalize for you that everybody is afraid to talk about it. You know, we live in a society that tells us don't talk about it. Society really says, you know, it's morbid, it's gross. Why would you talk about that? You should just be busy living. And we really just want to ignore it. We're so bad about difficult things in this society. We really just want to make it better. So we want to rescue people. And in that rescue, we're kind of saying, oh, we'll talk about that later. We don't need to talk about that. But that's just not true. And the real thing is that aside from birth, death is the only experience that all of us are going to have. We're going to experience the death of people we love. If we're lucky enough to love a lot of people, we're really going to experience a lot of death. And that's a terrible thing, a beautiful thing. You know, the grief is a reflection of the love. And so it's really important we allow ourselves to feel that as opposed to what our community does, which is like, okay, you have a couple days to feel bad, and then we want you to get back to normal because your discomfort makes us uncomfortable. So please go over there until you can join us in a happy way. And that's just terrible. So quite honestly, that's why we need to be talking about this stuff. We need to be making talking about death part of life, because death is not a failure. Death is how our lives are supposed to end. It's part of our life. It's not separate from our life. And we don't know when it's going to be. And we need to learn how to talk about it. And we need to learn how to talk about hard stuff. It's interesting with COVID because people are really experiencing so much hard stuff. And it's not like I can just think, oh, Taylor's having a hard time because of COVID, or Dale's having a hard time because of COVID. We're all having a hard time. The whole world is having a hard time. We might be having different kinds of hard times, but we're all sort of in this. And I feel like there's a lot of lessons to be had with the fact that, you know, everybody is experiencing difficulty and trauma and grief and hardship all at once. And maybe that opens us up to learning how to talk about this stuff in a more healthful way.
You touched on a lot of things in that, and one thing, or the couple of things that I want to maybe highlight are the grief. We want to talk about the grief because that's definitely a part of death, and then also the unknown of it all. Because I think as humans, we want to have the control, right? We want to know what's going to happen next. We want to plan for what's going to happen next. But we just don't know when that's going to happen. And so the unknown piece of it, I think, is important to touch on. And keeping those kind of highlights in mind, and Dale, I want to get your thoughts on those too. Mm-hmm. We did have a question just pop in from Malou. How do we have a meaningful conversation with someone who is dying with dementia?
I can start off with that, if you'd like, with my experience. My husband would not speak about it. He would not speak about death, even when he was of sound mind. So it was really upon me, and I wanted to honor and respect him. And I really thought about the experiences we had together, what was meaningful to him, and what his values were. And I really felt that was a way to really make his end of life as meaningful to him and his family and friends as possible. And that, Jamie, I came to you with my ideas and you helped me pull it all together. You can't do this alone. And I felt very much alone when I realized he would not speak about it, and then he couldn't speak about it. And my children did not want to deal with it. They were in their 30s and they were just at a whole different point in their life. And it was really hard for them to recognize their father was dying. So you have to find that person to reach out to work with and make that plan. And Jamie, for me, it was you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really my honor to do that. And you were so good at knowing what was meaningful, and also knowing that it is meaningful. You know, so many people will say, I don't need a funeral. I don't need a memorial service. When you're dead, you're dead. And I think that's true. You know, probably the dead person is fine, but the living need a path to walk on. And it's very difficult to create that path when you are in the deep, acute shock and grief. Mm-hmm. Putting the plan into place long before it's needed, hopefully before there's a diagnosis. You know, when death really does feel theoretical, that's really helpful. But one of the things that strikes me, Taylor, is in your question of control. You know, when we are ill, when someone we love is ill, there is so little control. Things are just happening to us, happening to somebody we love. It's really very, very difficult. We don't know what timing is going to look like for most things. And the idea of being able to put a plan in place to know that we don't know when we're going to need to make this happen, when to put it into effect, but we have the plan geared up, ready to go when we need it. That helps people. That helps them to feel in control of a situation that is so uncontrollable. So I really would recommend that we're all doing this. I think 55 and up is really the sweet spot. But once you have a diagnosis, I mean, it's really great to be able to have the conversation, but we have to meet the person who is in the middle of that where they are. Just like Dale, that you alluded to, Bill couldn't have the conversation and you couldn't force him to have the conversation because that's not respecting him. You know, if somebody can't have it, you got to meet them where they are. And you knew you were the one who was going to have to put the plan in place. So you respected yourself enough to go and make the plan. A lot of people will sort of say, well, you know, my husband refuses to talk about it, so we're not going to do anything at all. I'm dealing with clients right now in that situation. They have met with me on and off for more than 10 years. And they can't finalize the plan. And for them, I think that a lot is it's a financial issue, that the money piece of it is very overwhelming to them. The interesting part of that, though, is that funerals and memorial services double in cost every 7 to 10 years.
Oh,
so the plan 10 years ago, when they first started talking to me about it, it would have been half what it is now. And they would have had a lot of options about paying for it. And now the woman has been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And they're really feeling so overwhelmed by all that's happening to her and all that's happening to their family because of the matriarch being very, very ill. There's just so much. And then we're layering on, they know they have to get this done now. And the financial piece is even harder. And I'm doing all I can to help them, but there's only so much I can do.
So I wanted to reiterate, we just got another question coming in too. If you are watching right now and you do have a question to pose to Jamie, we would love to see it in the comments. That would be great. So going back to, I think this kind of segues right into the next question that was posted, but what are some tips on what words to articulate when talking about dying?
So it's really interesting. I feel like people think that there are magic words. There are magic words to help people in their bereavement. There are magic words that are going to make this an easy conversation. There are magic words. They're not magic words. There just aren't. And what I would say is to open the door to this conversation. Maybe it's great to say, hey, I was watching this Facebook Live and they were talking about that we need to talk about this. Can we arrange a time to have that discussion? I know it's scary, you know, just start paving the way. Another way is to say, I've been thinking about planning for myself, or I've been thinking about what's happening, or just I'm recognizing what's happening in the world. And I'm feeling really vulnerable and I'd like to have this conversation. The one thing I'd like to say, and this will be for our younger viewers, start talking about this when your children are children. It is really like conversations about sex. You know how a couple of generations ago, we were real careful. We didn't use proper terminology for body parts. We would talk about the pee-pee, the wee-wee, the hoo-ha. We realized we have to use anatomically correct terms because that helps people helps kids to feel in control of their body. And if God forbid something's going on with them, they have an infection, God forbid somebody is touching them inappropriately, they have to have that language because that tells them it's okay to talk about it. That's true with death. You know, we talk about people passing away, transitioning, those kinds of things. They die. People die. And it's okay that they die. That's part of life. So if we can use that terminology when kids are little, if we can practice by, when the goldfish dies, instead of going out to buy the identical goldfish so the kid doesn't have to feel bad that the goldfish died, or saying that the dog went to the farm to live, if we could say, Buster got very old and sick, and it's time for us to help him to die, and we're going to invite the vet over. We're going to all be with him and cuddle him. And then we're going to have a ceremony to honor his life and honor our feelings about his life. When our kids are little, they can practice. They don't have to be this terrified about it. We can change the culture. So that's going to be aimed at our younger people. At our people who didn't have that, I'd just like to say, talking about this doesn't make anything happen. Talking about death will not kill you. It's okay. Now, saying that, there are some people who will never be able to talk about it. Bill was not able to talk about it. My father, who's an estate planning attorney, can't talk about it. There are just some people that it's just, they can't.
Jamie, there is one question that has come to mind after my mom and Bill passed that I would ask them if they were still alive. And I really think this would be a segue to help them to start thinking about there was an end of life. And that is, how would you wish to be remembered? That's a legacy thing. And as we age, we're all working on what will be our legacy when we leave this world. And I think that puts people in a different mindset. They start reflecting back on their life, and then they can make that step forward to think about their death. That is the question I would ask my mom and Bill if I had it to do again.
And knowing your mom and Bill, you feel like they could answer.
I think that would have been an entry point for me. Instead of saying, what do you want for your funeral? I didn't know. And I, like you said, I didn't want to push Bill. But that is the question I would ask if I had it to do again.
I also wonder if it would be helpful to say, how would you like me to be able to heal? What is it that we can do that will provide healthy and healing bereavement for me? Because losing you is going to really be a big deal. And I need to figure out how to take steps forward. And I'd like you to help me with that, because we've been in this together.
Yeah.
You've always taken care of me. And I want you to continue to take care of me. And I think that's a big part of people's fear of talking about it, is I'm not going to be there.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful, Jamie. I
just thought of that right now.
that is just super powerful. And some people intuitively do that. I've heard the stories, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah. And sorry, Taylor.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to highlight, you talked about meeting people where they are. And that's, I think, especially true with Bill, Dale, from what you've told us today. But people that don't want to talk about it or are not ready to talk about it, I mean, how do you step into that? How do you meet them where they are to still start to have this conversation? And Dale, that question that you posed, I think, is a great starting point.
Yeah. And I think that trying to figure out how to really talk about what's happening, I think that that's one of the things that we don't do. One of the reasons I got into this work was many, many, many years ago when I was 26. One of my closest friends got diagnosed with a brain tumor, a glioblastoma. That's the brain tumor that John McCain died from, Ted Kennedy. I mean, people don't live with it. But she was 26, and she had, at that time, a 10-month-old baby. That's a nightmare. And everybody was saying to her, you're young, you're strong, you can beat this. This isn't a disease you can beat. There are a lot of diseases that It's going to beat you no matter how strong you are. And I just handled it very differently. And I don't know how I knew to do this, but I just said, will you share with me what it feels like to know that, you know, you're not going to be here to raise Max? Will you share with me what it feels like? And we had deep, meaningful, and authentic conversations. And it was really good for me because I can feel much more complete with her death. It's also really good for me because in this work, I have her with me all the time. It's really amazing. She's been gone for 22 years and I still feel deeply connected to her. But it was good for her because she didn't have to pretend that she was young and strong and was going to beat this. And there was one person that she could actually be authentic with about it because I could handle it. So many of us don't want to go into those deep and scary and authentic places with people. We want to make it better, and it doesn't really make it. And then we have regrets after they're gone.
I want to jump into that for a second because I have something personal that's kind of similar to that situation. And how do you, I think it's a balance, and I'm curious to see if you agree with me, Jamie, on being positive, right? And staying within and not going into that kind of meaningful, deep conversation at times, but staying on that positive side and really thinking about the life you do have left, so to speak, or however long that might be. How do you balance maybe the two of those? Because I think it is a balance.
Yeah, well, I think that being authentically present with people is what's really important. And because we're so afraid, it's very difficult to be present with them. You know, we want to just make them feel better, but to kind of say, you know, will you share with me what you're feeling right now? Some people are going to need you to be a cheerleader, and that's okay. If that's what they need, that's fine. There's this wonderful theory called ring theory. It was developed by Susan Silk, and she developed it when she was dealing with breast cancer. So she had gone in for surgery, and her friend wanted to come visit her in the hospital. And she said, you know, I'm really not up for it. And the friend said, you know, this isn't just all about you. Well, so she developed this wonderful theory. And so the person who's dealing with the illness is in the center of the rings. That person gets to say anything they want to anybody at any time. The next ring is like their spouse, their children. The next ring, the very close friends. The next ring, the coworkers, you know, goes out, out, out.
Yes.
At the center, as I said, can say anything they want to anyone at any time. They can scream, they can cry, they can comfort, whatever they need, that's what they get to do. That's the only benefit to being in the center of the ring. The people on the outer rings can do all those things too. They just have to do it to the outside. So all the comfort goes in. I'm here for you. I'm going to meet you where you are. That all goes in. That screaming, the crying, I wish she'd stop eating so much dairy. Why won't she see my chiropractor? My mom had the same disease and here's what she did. That all goes out. So I can say that, you know, if my good friend is dealing with something awful and I need to be with her for that, I can complain to my husband about, I wish she would do this, or why won't she talk about this, or whatever. But I have to be very present with her, with the person who's dealing with whatever it is, and meet her with where she is. I can say things like, I wonder if you want to talk about this, and I want you to know that I can be here to hear anything you need to say. But I don't have to say, hey, I need to talk to you about your death because I'm really worried about it. I can say, I wonder if you want to talk about this.
What a great way to meet someone where they are.
Yeah.
And Jamie, I would, and I love that theory. Oh, I wish we could get that out there to everybody. And I would say too, in some of the work I do, being present and being comfortable with silence is so important while we're listening to that person. That is such a hard thing to do. We have to learn to be silent because there's so much going on in their head right then that we just have to be with them in that space.
Yes. And we have to learn, instead of saying, oh, I know just what you mean, let me share what I experienced, which was similar. We have to, which stops them from sharing. We have to say, oh, tell me more about that. Say more about that.
The thing I equate that to, if I understand correctly, is listening to understand, not listening to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're not good at it. And
it's hard.
Yeah. And silence is worse. Silence is really hard. And sometimes we just find ourselves babbling at somebody because we're so uncomfortable. And I would say that's true of people's bereavement too. I mentioned the magic words. There aren't magic words to make people feel better. And sometimes when we reach for what we think is right, actually makes people feel worse. When we say, at least he died doing something he loved, at least he's, in heaven, at least you have another child, whatever that is, those things are not helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with the point of this video, why we're talking about this is to be better. Because we're human, we make mistakes, we say things that oh crap, I made a mistake. Let me try that again. Let me learn from that. Right?
But yeah. People are so afraid to make a mistake that they sometimes really withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
They just go away because they don't know what to say or do. And it is okay to make mistakes. It's hard. This is scary.
Yeah, and I was listening to a psychotherapist speak about grief last night, and she said, we're all going to mess up. All of us, even the professionals, we're all going to make the mistake. We're going to learn from it, apologize to the person. We are human, Taylor. That's true.
Yes.
So let's talk about grief a little bit, because I'm under the understanding that there's stages, right? And I walk these stages and then I'm done. I feel better. That's how it works, right?
That's what you learned in 9th grade psychology.
Right.
Ross. And that's really the only time any of us ever think about or talk about grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, in her wonderful research, was investigating people who were dealing with their own death. So they were anticipating their own death. They've had a diagnosis, they were maybe in hospice, whatever. So they were figuring that out. And she named these steps. I don't know if she even believed they went in this very linear order, but what's happened since then, and she's been around a long time, or her work has been around a long time, we think, oh, okay, first I get denial, then I have bargaining, I don't remember what they all are, and then I get to acceptance, and then I'm done, and the grief is over, and I'm fixed. Well, it's just not true. It's just not true. Grief is, first of all, never ending. You might get better at it. That's what somebody said to me is, I don't get over it, but I get better at it. And I thought that was really beautiful. And you get kind of more prepared for what it's going to feel like. And I do think that when you get these big, huge waves, especially at the beginning, it really is like the ocean where it's just crashing over you and you think you're going to drown and it's coming so fast and furious and you just don't know how to catch your breath even. Later on in the process, maybe you can see the waves coming. Maybe you can prepare a little, but also you've had some experience in knowing, okay, I will be able to catch my breath. So then you can trust it a little bit more and you just get better at it. But every so often, I mean, Dale, I imagine this happens for you, that every so often it's high tide again and you're still overcome. And that's just how it is. And everybody does it differently.
Yeah, it's a year next month. And I totally agree with everything you say. It's not linear. It's with you for the rest of your life. And it's our 48th wedding anniversary today. And I woke up sobbing, just sobbing. And talk about crashing down. That was what I thought. It crashed down on me. And I just was so caught off guard because I'd been fine for, a while. And I'm like, no, this is part of it. So it's just really recognizing it's part of it. It's normal. It's healthy. I remember speaking to my therapist, who I still go to. And at first I said, I need to integrate my loss. I was very, I had my plan. What I've come to realize, it's integrating your loss with the memories and with the love. Yes. It creates a new life.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to put it. And it's so interesting because, we really do, we want to go do it really well. And, when we hear from people who are doing it well, that means they look good all the time. I once had a client who called me up and she said, my son really wants me to talk to you. I'm really having a terrible time with my grief. My mom's been gone for 9 months. Every time her name comes up, I tear up. And my son really wants me to get some help with that because I'm not grieving well. And I said, it sounds to me like you're grieving just fine. And grief doesn't mean, doing it well doesn't mean you're fine. Doing it well means you allow the crashing down. You don't shove it away. You say, I'm going to sit in this. I'm going to trust it's going to recede when it's ready to recede. And the more I can allow myself to feel whatever I feel, the better I'm handling it and the better I'm integrating it. And that's what it is. Those of us who really push it away and refuse to acknowledge it, they're the ones who are really having trouble, who aren't grieving well. That's really what when we talk about complicated grief, I think that's more what it is shoving away.
Yeah.
One of my good friends at Applewood, Barbara, she was on a Facebook Live 2 weeks ago. She's one of our house managers here at Applewood. And she said, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, but she said the only way is through. And Jamie, what you said about sitting with it and seeing the wave come, letting it crash over you, and sitting with each one of those feelings, because I imagine there's hundreds of them in that moment. That's the only way through.
Yes. And allowing it to run over you. One of my coworkers lost a child to suicide 5 years ago. And she has been with Feldman's for almost 3 years. And she says that these are the best grieving years of her life because we encourage her to feel it. So once she called me and she said, I just am really having a bad PJ day. That's her child's name. I'm having a bad PJ day. And I said, well, if you feel like you need to stay in bed or whatever you need, that's what you need to do. She said, well, I feel so guilty because I'm not coming to work and I feel guilty about that. And I said, if you had stomach flu and you needed to stay in bed, would you feel guilty about it? And she said, no. So now she refers to it as grief flu. And she just allows herself to have, some days are awful. Some days are awful, and it's okay. And it's okay to put the sheets over your head. I have another client who lost a child, and she said that on her child's birthday, she kind of takes some sleeping pills and has to sleep through it. And her friends have, kind of given her a little bit of grief for that and said, you can't do that. And I'm like, you do whatever it takes. If that's what it takes to get to the day after your child's birthday, that's what you need to do, and that's okay. And she's not doing that 300 days of the year. She needs to do it 1 day of the year. I'm going to just support her in that. I'm not going to tell her she's doing it wrong. God forbid I should ever know what it means to be in that. I'm not telling her how to do it. It's, again, the ring theory. I might tell my friend, well, I'm really worried that Joanne's doing this. But for Joanne, I'm going to just say, okay, I'm here for you.
Yeah, and to make sure she's safe and doing what she needs to do. And I think I need to change my language a little bit. When I said the only way is through, I mean, do you ever really get through it?
You know, no.
Right.
No, it doesn't ever end, right, Dale? I mean,
there is no end point, but it's what I was talking about, like this new life. Mm-hmm. You grow, you change, you grow, and hopefully you're surrounded by people who support and love you and will let you talk about that. That's a big thing, Jamie. You know, when somebody dies, people don't talk about the person. Yes. And for the primary loved one, we want to keep talking.
Yes.
We want to keep talking and know that their life mattered and that our love mattered.
And isn't it interesting, because I think that they don't talk about the person out of respect and caring for the bereaved. They're really afraid, oh, if I bring Bill up, that's going to make Dale feel bad. Well, no, first of all, you're going to feel whatever you feel. You're grieving because you're grieving. It's not because I said, how are you doing on your wedding anniversary? I'm thinking of you. It seems like it might be hard to have this anniversary without Bill. How are you? Or I was out at the park and I saw something that reminded me of Bill. Remember that time we did da-da-da-da-da-da?
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
That brings us kind of full circle back to meeting the person where they are and what do they need from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being open to what they need and saying, I'm here for what you need. I will say the one thing that we do when someone's bereaved or they're ill or whatever, we'll say, let me know what I can do to help. They don't know what you can do to help. So please try to say, here's what I can do to help. I can sit with you and I can hear anything you need to say. I can sit with you in silence. I'll sit next to you and we can both read a book, whatever, you know, or I'll come take your trash cans to the curb every week. I'll walk your dog if that's good for you. Is it good for you for me to go get your groceries? But don't say, let me know what I can do for you, because that person, they don't know, and you are imposing on them to have to come up with it. And most of us don't want to reach out in that way to say, hey, I really need somebody to get my groceries. It's very difficult to do that.
Jamie, I want to say thank you for this conversation. I certainly have learned a lot. I'm young, and I'm still learning how to be better around these conversations. Like I think I said at the beginning, this is a difficult conversation for me, and I'm excited to keep kind of learning and growing in that.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. And what I also want you to know is that we're all learning. I learn stuff every day. And I think about this every minute of every day. So we're all figuring it out. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thank you. And Dale, thank you for being here and sharing your story as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great to see you.
We also wanted to let everyone know that we are having our annual Caring Counts event. It's coming in October. This year's event will be all online due to the circumstances of COVID. It'll be Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. every single one of those days for about 45 minutes. So if you want to join us each day in October, October 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th, that week, every day at noon, from noon to about noon 45 or 12:45. You can register via our Facebook page on the events, or I will also post the link to our registration in the comments of this Facebook Live video. We're super excited because both of our presenters here will be presenting at Caring Counts. Dale will be doing a segment on the Care Cafe, which we're very excited about. And then Jamie will be doing Embracing End of Life by Acknowledging It's Finite. We're super excited for that event. Please register. And like I said, Jamie, Dale, thank you so much for being here. So appreciate your time.
Thank you. Happy anniversary. Sending
thank you, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you in 2 Wednesdays.
Bye.